Welcome to our City Council meeting on February the 5th, and we will start off this morning with our chaplain prayer. And so if we could please come forward.
Mayor Gunkler, and to the esteemed members of the City Council, our City Manager, our Madam Clerk, and honorable department heads and guests, good morning. And thank you for this opportunity to do the prayer. Let's pray. Precious Father, Lord, you are the creator of the heavens and the earth. We pause in the business of our lives to recognize and reflect upon the power you have entrusted to us. May we have the wisdom to use that power and our influence to build up the whole human family, and especially the citizens and guests of this great city. May San Angelo be recognized by those within and without as a city that values neighborhoods, neighborly people, cherish education and wisdom, promotes justice and compassion, encourages business and rewards hard work, supports the arts and rewards our artists, celebrates together as a wonderfully diverse family, models politics that add values to the lives of all. Bless now this council meeting as council members deal with details and visions, and may all those of goodwill join together in advancing the promise and the purpose of our people. Amen.
Thank you, Marcella. That was wonderful. We will now do our pledges, and today we have the Central High School cheer team members, Junior Carly Wallace, and seniors Maddie Garnett, Shaylee Stewart, and Acacia Wiley. Would you please come forward? And hopefully I pronounced your name somewhat close to what you're used to hearing. So you might correct me and get it right. Go ahead and announce, please.
Acacia.
Shiley. Maddie. Carly. Good. All right, so let's turn to the flags. All right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
We will now do the one proclamation that we have today, and it is recognition of San Angelo Central High School cheerleaders being named national champions. So we have a lot of cheerleaders in the audience. Would you like to come forward, girls and guys? And Guy. Come on around this way too so you can. Back here for anybody who wants to come back here. Okay. We congratulate the San Angelo Central High School cheerleaders for earning the title of national champions at the National Cheer Association's annual competition held on Saturday, January the 26th, 2019 in Dallas, Texas. Central High School's cheer team competed against 23 other teams in their division in order to win this much sought-after national championship. This is the Bobcats' fourth overall title and their first title in this division. In addition to being named national champions overall, they were also named national champions in cheer and runner-up in the fight song categories. This year's 28-member cheer team is coached by Matt Eskew and Amanda Chambers. This is Matt's 16th year and Amanda's second year coaching this group of outstanding young people. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby recognize and applaud the Central High School cheerleaders for their achievement and positive determination to make a difference in our community. Thank you. Do we have someone who would like to speak? Is Matt here or Amanda? How did we pick you out of the crowd? I don't know. Please, let me get it. Whatever you want. No, let's limit that to how you got to where you're at today with this great team of cheerleaders. Your leadership, okay? We want to hear about leadership.
Okay. This group of girls worked really hard this year and never gave up, even though it was kind of a rough start to the year. They were determined, worked hard, and pushed each other from the beginning, and I couldn't be more thankful for that.
Is Amanda here? Amanda, why don't you, come on, why don't you say a few words? Or one word.
Well, yeah, just to reflect what Matt said, this year started off like a little rough, but everyone had determination, and the girls always came together as a team at the end of the day, so that was really neat to see, and it was a well-deserved win for them.
Okay, we're going to have to tighten up because we're going to have a picture taken, so. Come on, everybody tighten up. All girls in the back, all girls in the back. Girls in the front.
Matt, congratulations. Our book's on to this movie. Oh,
Thanks, Matt.
Congrats, certainly. Races for them.
Yeah. Your homework. Yeah.
All right, we will now move into public comment. Issues or items that are not on the regular agenda may be raised by the public at this time. Citizens should speak from the podium, begin by stating their name, and limit remarks to less than 3 minutes. Council members may request that a discussed item be placed on a future agenda. The council takes public comment on all regular agenda items during the discussion of those items. I want to start off by making an announcement that City Council, City staff, and the Railroad Museum have a final contract. It has been signed, and the Railroad Museum has officially are officially under contract with the City of San Angelo to continue to run the Railroad Museum. A lot of people keep asking about it and want to know what's happened with that. Well, we've got a Railroad Museum back in action and a formal contract. So thank you, everybody who worked hard to put that together. We will, any public comment today? With no public comment, we will move into the consent agenda. And I'm going to start by pulling items E, F, and G. Billy, do you have any that you would like to pull?
Mayor, I'd like to pull item C and item J.
Okay. Lane? Lucy?
No, ma'am.
Carrie?
No.
Tom?
No, ma'am.
Tommy?
No, ma'am.
All right.
Got 'em.
Do I have a motion to accept the consented agenda with the exception of items C, E, F, G, and J?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Tom, seconded by Billy. Any public comment?
Thank you, Mayor. Steve Hampton. I was hoping that you would pull E also.
I did.
You did?
Did.
I'm sorry.
Any other public comment? With no public comment, we will take a vote on approving the consent agenda with the exception of items C, E, F, G, and J. All in favor?
Aye.
With none opposed, consent agenda approved. We will start by discussing item C. Consider approving, 1, a master agreement with Killis Allman Architects and authorizing the city manager to execute all related documents to restore the masonry at City Hall. And 2, task order 1 in the amount of $85,000 to research, investigate, document, and establish the causation and required masonry and waterproofing requirements for the repair and waterproofing of the exterior City Hall walls. Hi, Ron, how are you today?
Morning, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Yes, ma'am?
Ron, I was just hoping for the benefit of the citizens that are observing this, if you could just share with us briefly what happened, how it was discovered, and the potential impact if we don't do something about this.
Happy to do that. When the project was renovated, the building, back in 2010, 11, 12, there was some construction that required some removal of some of the stone because it was showing to being separating from the how it was attached to the wall and some water infiltration. At the time, there was limited funds and there was not the desire, I guess, to spend the money additional beyond the scope of the project, to expand the scope of the project to do that. So since then, we've had the building renovated, and we may have had some infiltration. We knew we had some roof leaks before and some infiltration through the stone. We just didn't know the extent. And when you tighten up your building with really better windows and the new roof, then we saw it was isolated to the walls. And at the time, Killis and his staff did documentation with our construction guys of where there's some separations, and that's cracks in the mortar joints, to be simple, like the wall behind you. If it cracks and the rain hits it, it's going to go through. And when it goes through, it's going to come out somewhere. Well, it's not waterproofed on those existing clay tile block, so it comes into the building instead of going out of the building like it's supposed to.
And the potential impact if we don't
It's going to
do the
continue
research.
to allow more as the freeze and thaw cycles occur. When your water gets into the mortar joints and it gets wet, it expands. When it freezes, it'll expand more. And as it shrinks, it'll crack. And then those stones can separate and move more. And the attachment methods are wire instead of a more substantial steel. And there's no waterproofing behind there. So over time, you're going to have more movement. You're going to take on more water. And that could lead to what water gets in the building and causes. It can be mold. And we had that before I came here years ago in the early 2000s in the basement where it infiltrated and got in there. And so that's the first step. And then you start worrying about stone coming detached from the wall. If the wire behind it that gets wet and rust, and when it fails, the stone's going to come down.
So the research, I mean, we know what the issues are, what the problems are. The $85,000 to do the research and everything, that's important?
That is, research in this case is not like a typical, let's go look at it and see what the problem is. We have to set a scaffold up around the building in a portion of it. We have to take the stone off the wall to see what the problems are, where we do see cracks. And so there's a lot of costs involved with labor that's not just looking at it. And then the consultant, Killis, will look at it. He has a team of engineers that work with him on the building originally that know how to design the attachment methods and the weeping methods to let the water out and the waterproofing methods. So it's going to be set up some scaffold, take some stone down, see what we've got, design a method to both waterproof, reattach the stone and regrout it in, and then move to the next section. And we don't know if the sections are all going to be dealt with the same way because they may not have been done the same way originally. And he did do research on the original documents to the building. What they found in taking some of the stone that was failing then, the joints, was it wasn't attached the way it was designed to originally, and that was in 28, so.
1928.
1928, just a long time ago. So, yeah, not to say that methods as designed and constructed aren't always changed in the field for various reasons. But it's time to look at it, and let's keep it from, we don't want to wind up seeing a piece of block on the ground one day, and we don't want to have more water infiltration like we do now, for health reasons, for anything else.
And it was, this was discovered, if I'm not mistaken, at the time we were redoing the building then.
It was.
But no one wanted to spend the money then, so it's come back to bite us because there was, you know, it's one of those things, it doesn't go away. It could just get worse and more expensive.
And the good thing is the methodology is sound, that because we have small sections of the building that we can take apart at one time. I'd like to, put the whole building wrapped up with scaffolding like we do at our state and federal capitals, but we're not going to fund it like that. So we're going to do it in small pieces.
All right. Thanks, Ron. I appreciate that. I don't know if there are any more questions, but I move to approve item C.
And there's a motion and a second. Any public comment on item C? With no public comment on item C, we'll take a vote. All in favor of approving item C, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. We'll move on to item E. Consider ratifying COSA DC's approval of updates to the Business Retention and Expansion Program Plan, Incentives Policy, Guidelines, and Marketing Plan. Shannon, you're on.
Good morning. Shannon Scott, Business Retention and Expansion Coordinator with the city, and I'd be happy to answer any questions in regards to this item.
Tell us what the updates are.
So essentially what we did is the last time that these program plans and guidelines were updated were about 5 years ago. So we figured new year, new person coming in to take over the program, it was time to really sit down and redo these policies because they were outdated. So we sat down and we actually combined the program plan, the policy, and the guidelines into one document because several of those documents were very redundant. It was a lot of repetitive information. So in order to kind of streamline that and make it easier to understand, we consolidated those documents into one easy-to-read, up-to-date document. So what we also did, when we go out and we speak to these companies and we're doing research into these projects, we kind of get a feel for what they're wanting as far as their company and incentives are concerned. So with that said, a lot of the demand comes from a capital investment incentive. So we actually added that to our policy to include that as a potential incentive that they can receive. We reworded the job creation incentive. We actually eliminated, there were several specific life safety incentives that were very specific. And instead of having those as specific items, we just lump those into the capital investment incentive. So again, it would be not so stringent, but a little bit more flexible when it comes to capital investment incentives. We also updated our tax abatement and rebate schedule. Again, that was very complicated. It was over a 10-year period. It was just very, very convoluted and hard to understand. So we truncated that and put it into a four-year period and did a sliding scale from 100% down to 70%. So 100% for year 1, 90 for year 2, 80 for year 3, and 70 for year 4. So again, a lot easier to understand and read. Again, we updated.
In year 4, the tax abatement goes away?
Yes, ma'am. So it only lasts for the 4 years, and after that, it's complete. We also updated, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So they have to put their capital investment in first before they start to receive these benefits. We have to see some proof of that.
Absolutely. So they have to, again, when we meet and we sit down and generate an agreement, they have to give us a capital investment amount, and they do have to meet that before we pay anything out. So they do meet that, and they have to show proof of payment that that has been met before we expend any funds to that company.
On the job creation, if one was to say, okay, so you're going to create more jobs, is there a baseline from which that is determined? Meaning, if you go from 1 to 2, you can do that, or is there? How do we determine the job creation?
So typically, there is some sort of retention aspect to that. Again, COCDC does not fund new enterprises, so there has to be some sort of established jobs already in place. So when we construct the agreement, we typically will start with the baseline. And again, that depends on what they already have in place. So it could be 4 employees, and they could say we would create up to 64 or something like that. So we start with a retention number and then go to an up to number for the job creation.
And is there a timeline on which those jobs must be put in place, like the abatement, which is a 4-year plan? What is the job creation plan?
Typically, it's 3 years. So they have 3 years to create those jobs.
Okay. Keep going.
So again, we had a lot of specific workforce training, business training, and things like that that, again, were very outdated. As you know, those programs tend to update each year, so we just updated those to be more reflective of what we have currently going on as far as training and things like that. Our marketing plan was extremely outdated. We were using marketing techniques that were very kind of old school that weren't working, so we updated that as well.
And how is that done? And how is that?
I'm sorry?
What's the new?
So some of the programs that we had been using in the past were things like newspaper ads, radio ads, television ads, and we weren't getting a lot of response from those as far as people calling or coming in the office and inquiring about the program. So what we've done and what we've seen, what the Chamber has done that's seen a lot of success with their SARMA program is actually going out, speaking to these companies and getting testimonials. So that's a new avenue that we're going to pursue as far as actually getting out, meeting with the businesses, showcasing their job, and then having them explain to us the success that they've had through our BREP program.
Okay. Keep going.
As far as highlights on updates, that's really all we did. Again, I think the main goal was just to consolidate the documents so that it was easier to read, less paper, more streamlined and up to date.
What's your goal for this year in terms of your business retention expansion program?
So again, we've already got 2 contracts in the works. We have met with or have meetings with 3 companies in the next week or so we're really progressing quickly. Again, I would personally like to have, I think we had maybe 1 BREP contract last year, so we're already ahead of where we were last year, which is great. But again, to get out, get the testimonials, get the marketing plan working, networking with these folks, building relationships, and things of that nature.
What's your goal for number of companies you want to contact per month or annually?
We don't really have a set goal. I have a personal goal. I would like to get out or call or network with maybe 5 to 10 companies a month, which we have been doing in conjunction with the Chamber. We've been getting out and networking with those folks and visiting them. So I think we're on the right path as far as building those relationships.
Do I have further questions or comments from council? No further comments or questions from council. I move to approve item E. Is there any public comment?
Steve Hampton. These policies seem to be quite readable to me, and I don't see a need for change, especially the policy. This is a half-cent sales tax funded by the goodwill of the citizens of this city, and so we're trying to help people within our community already. And then you want to keep increasing the tax abatements. That is not good. These should decrease on a 25% increment instead of a 10%, leading to a 100% on the first year, 75 seconds, 50, and 25. It used to be 50-50, I believe, and they've increased it even more. So this is is not right in my thinking. That also the appraisal district. Are we asking appraisal district what this is going to cost us? We need to get. There's some other people that we need to ask about. The long-term goals seem to be competitive with local business instead of helpful to increasing the, if we already have one and we're trying to get in another to cut down or to increase competition, that is not always helpful to the community. And so I would ask that, especially on these.
Steve, when you say competition, what are you talking about? When you say it's creating
Well,
competition?
their long-term goals, if you'll look over that, I think need to be rewritten. I don't agree with half of them, and I don't have them before me. I apologize. So
I guess we can't address it then.
if we have a funeral home in town and we bring in another funeral home, it's not going to be necessarily helpful, especially if the rates are already low. You know, this could be any other product. I just happen to be in that line. So this needs to be rethought, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
Mayor,
Yes,
if
sir.
I could, Shannon, correct me if I'm wrong, but business retention and expansion has to do with businesses which already exist in this location. This program doesn't bring businesses to town so much as it assists existing businesses.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
correct?
You are correct.
So the question about bringing in competing businesses from out of town is not relevant to this program. Is that correct?
Exactly. So we focus on taking care of existing businesses that are already located here.
Go ahead and repeat again what BREP stands for.
It stands for Business Retention and Expansion Program.
So it's not about new businesses coming into town.
Correct.
Outgrowing the ones who are already paying taxes.
That's right.
And on the abatement, when you go from year 1 to year 4, so it's 100 to 70, and then it drops off to 0?
That's correct.
So what is the 70%?
So what we'll do when we structure an agreement, and again, we don't do a whole lot of abatements or rebates, just again because most companies would rather have a capital investment incentive or job creation as opposed to the abatement or the rebate. But what we'll do is we'll see the baseline of what their property is appraised at, and then that increment of increase once they do, say, the capital investment, they expand their building or purchase more equipment. That increment of the increase is what we would rebate, excuse me, or abate them on based on that percentage year. So say it's year 3 and their appraisal has gone up $2,000, then we would abate 70% of that. So even as it decreases, you're really not going to see a whole lot of increase from the original value, say from the time after the improvements are made. Does that make sense? So you kind of do the improvements, it increases, and that's where your big increase stands. It doesn't really keep going up substantially over the 4 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have any further public comment or questions? With none, we'll take a vote. All in favor of approving item E, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, passes 7-0. We will move on to item F, which is consider ratifying bylaws for the Animal Shelter Advisory Committee. And Morgan, you're on.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. What's before you today is that you'll recall back in September, October, y'all approved an overarching ordinance revising how all the boards and commissions, just bringing greater uniformity to what's going on.
I'm going to talk a little louder.
Yes, ma'am, I apologize. So one of the requirements of that ordinance was that each of those boards and committees must bring their bylaws to you for re-ratification. And so we brought them into the uniform format, and that's what's before you today. Animal Shelter Advisory Committee is simply the first one that's before you. You'll see a kind of a litany of these coming towards you as each of the committees work through reviewing their bylaws, bringing them in line with the ordinance, and then ultimately approving them and bringing them to the council for ratification. So what's before you for the Animal Shelter Advisory Committee, there are no substantive changes. The items that are left here in the Advisory Committee bylaws are largely intact what they used to have in their bylaws. It's just streamlined. Much of what were in the prior bylaws are now spoken to in the overarching ordinance that y'all had approved, and so this is simply the smaller items that the committee chooses to enforce on themselves.
And those would be what?
So, for example, one of the items is related to the No-Kill initiative that they are taking strides in supporting shelter operations and programs that ensure that we reach that no-kill rate in the future. Another item is that.
And what would that be?
A no-kill rate is standardly defined as a 90% live release rate. And so you would seek programs such as a robust transfer program, a robust spay-neuter release feral cat program, additional adoptions, just a healthy foster program. So a number of items to bring forward to make sure that eventually we get to a point where we're at a 90% live release rate.
What are we at now?
For the months of December and January, we were at a 65% live release rate, which is very healthy. It's very healthy growth from where we came from.
So is 65 to 90 achievable in the near future? Because it's one thing to set a goal, it's another to be able to have in place strategies.
It is something that
to
will
help
require
us
additional
get there.
funding. It's something that's dependent upon soliciting donations and possibly increases to our tax budget, which I understand that we're funded by tax dollars, but through our partnership with Concho Valley Paws for donations, as well as streamlining items in our budget, we've already accelerated towards this goal much faster than I anticipated. So I think getting from where we were to 65%, we've done that work. Getting to 90%, I think will be harder. So to say near future, I think we're more than 5 years out from a no-kill initiative.
From 65 to 90.
Yes, ma'am. I think it will take greater than 5 years to achieve that.
Okay.
One other item that's required in the bylaws is that each committee member must visit or volunteer at the shelter monthly. That's to ensure that they're well-versed in the operations out there, so as they're making decisions, policy decisions, setting those programs, that they're aware of how they will be carried out and what their availability is. And then the bylaws state that we meet monthly unless no business is to be discussed or there's no items to discuss. For their January meeting, they already set the 2019 calendar to meet quarterly 4 times in a year, and we'll call special meetings as needed, which is also provided for in the bylaws. State law and city ordinance actually requires the committee to meet 3 times annually, so meeting those minimum requirements, meeting more frequently as needed. And those are the main items that the committee has chosen to, as I mentioned, enforce on themselves, having their own bylaws as requirements for that committee.
Okay. Do I have questions from council for Morgan? With no questions, we will open it up for a motion. Do I have a motion to approve item F?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
With a motion and a second, we'll now open this up for public comment. Is there any public comment on item F? With no public comment on item F, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Move on to item G. It's a, John, if you'll come forward. It's second reading and adoption of a lot of amendments changing zoning. And my question sort of applies to all of them. Do I need to read all of these?
Yes.
Okay. Well, they're kind of all the same. So, second reading and adoption of an ordinance for CP 18-09. Let me ask this question and then see if I still need to read the whole thing. The question is the following. Is it in the ordinance or is it required when we ask for rezoning that a notice is placed on the property so that anybody in the neighborhood or their surrounding neighborhood or the next door neighbor understands that a zoning change has been requested?
That is not required by our ordinance. However, we have traditionally done that in practice. Recently, we have lost, the signs don't always come back to us. And so we've changed our practice. Instead of using the heavy metal, like real estate, for sale signs, we've gone to a more cheaper disposable type sign, we still reuse those. All that to say is that we've recently changed the way we do those and only recently received a shipment of those signs. So in the last few months, that has not always been done.
So even though, and when I ask, it is in the ordinance, it is in our policy, or it's just something that we might do?
It is not a requirement of the ordinance, and it is not in any written policy.
We do need to read the entire caption.
Okay, so I'm going to start reading. Okay, hold on, everybody. Sorry I opened up this gate. Second reading and adoption of an ordinance for CP 18-09, an amendment to the City of San Angelo Comprehensive Plan, changing certain lands from the neighborhood center future land use to the neighborhood future land use, being .97 acres of land located at 2900 to 2920 Houston Street. And 2, an ordinance for Z18-24, a rezoning from the neighborhood commercial CN zoning district to the single-family RS-1 zoning district, being .48 acres of land located at 2920, 2916, 2912 Houston Street. 3, an ordinance for PD 18-05, a rezoning from the general commercial, heavy commercial CGCH zoning district to a planned development PD zoning district to allow for uses permitted within the general commercial CG zoning district, and a shared sign plan for off-site signage, being 9.93 acres of land located at 4206 College Hills Boulevard and 3121 and 3131 Sunset Drive. And 4, an ordinance for Z18-25, a rezoning from the low-rise multifamily residential RM1 zoning district to the neighborhood commercial CN zoning district, being .915 acres of land located at 5205 South Bryant Boulevard. And 5, an ordinance for Z18-27, a rezoning from the general commercial, heavy commercial CGCH zoning district and single-family residential RS1 zoning district to the low-rise multifamily residential RM1 zoning district, being 1.18 acres of land located at 3608 North Chadbourne Street.
And if we could keep the questions very specific to these items, maybe asking about how it was impacted on a certain case or.
Well, the question is, and the statement is for each and every one of these, was there a public sign put in place that reflected the rezoning request?
I don't know for positive on each of these. I think the answer is on these cases, no sign was put out, simply because we did not have any signs in our possession until we got this new shipment of signs, which I believe we now have. So moving forward, we will be posting these on the sites. I did find this section of the ordinance. It says in the section where we require mailed notice to the surrounding property owners, below that it says posted notice of required public hearings is encouraged by the city. Signs will be provided by the city, but the applicant is, the ordinance says is the applicant is responsible for placing the signs on the site. Traditionally, we have done that for them, taken those signs out. But again,
so does the applicant realize that it's his responsibility or her responsibility to place that zoning sign on the property?
Probably not. Again, we have done that. Staff has taken those signs out rather than placing the obligation on the applicant. We simply go out and place those signs on the site. Again, that's our normal practice, but with no signs available in the recent months, we have not been placing those signs.
And while those weren't required to be placed, and we didn't maybe in this case, we did still do the entire mail out to how large of an area surrounding?
Yes, we mailed out to the required 200 feet. All property owners within 200 feet of the subject property were notified, as well as the published notice in the newspaper.
But we've always done those things anyway. You've always mailed to the 200 feet. We've always put it in the paper, and we used to always tell the applicant that there would be a sign posted on that property to make people aware of what's going on when they drive by. But we haven't done that third part recently.
That's correct.
Question. So our policy would be going forward, we will be doing that again?
Yes, that's our plan, is to place those on the site. Again, sometimes those get taken, they fall down, the wind blows them, so
All of the above, but
We
we
can't
need to make
guarantee that they're always in place, but yes, that's our practice.
I just want to make sure we have a solid practice, consistent, same practice every time to make sure everybody is aware.
Yes.
Thank you. With that, I would entertain a motion. Well, let me ask, are there any other questions from anyone on council on item G? Okay. With no further questions, then I would entertain a motion to approve item G, inclusives of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 all at once.
Move.
And first, a motion and a second, so is there any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Item G passes 7-0. We'll move into item J, which is consider authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute an agreement and any related documents with the Southern Drag Boat Association, SDBA, for the annual drag boat races at Lake Nasworthy. Carl?
Yes, we've been approached by the Southern Drag Boat Association to continue the boat races at Lake Nasworthy, the drag boat races. They would host it. In the past, the Chamber has helped host the event with Lucas Oil. The last couple of years, we had an agreement with Lucas Oil, and they, last fall, told us they were no longer doing boat races, and so we were approached by the Southern Drag Boat Association, and they would like to continue the event. This agreement is for just 1 year, term for one event, and they would have to pay us a flat fee of $8,000 for the use of the parks for the weekend.
Billy, do you have a question?
So, Carl, in the past, the Lucas Boat show has been successful for San Angelo, bringing in revenue, and that's the same thing we expect with this group?
Yes, basically it's the same event. It's just a matter of who's hosting it. And the Southern Drag Boat Association has been part of the event, I think, since the very beginning. They've been integral to the event, so there's really no change in the event.
Do they have a history of successes
Yes.
with boat shows? Okay.
There is one difference, that since Lucas Oil isn't in it now, there won't be the national
No
TV
television.
coverage. That is one difference.
And I have one question, because it's been brought to my attention several occasions, and that is that we make sure in negotiating this that we work with the Lake Nasworthy homeowners to ensure that you have input from them as it regard in many different issues from what I understand, and they feel like they haven't in the past been brought into the conversation about those races, so they would just like an opportunity to have a voice. So if we could make sure in this negotiation that they're included in that negotiation and understand what we're doing, and they perhaps could give us some good insight in terms of what they think might work better. And Lucy, you have a question?
Yeah, and Carl, and that's a flat $8,000 fee that we're charging. Okay.
Do I have further questions from council on item J?
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Public comment? It's cold in here.
It's comfortable.
Could we raise the temp a little bit? We're
Steve
cold.
Hampton, I'm in disagreement.
Take your jacket off then.
Put yours on. You gotta
That's my outerwear.
Oh, okay. Steve Hampton, on this drag race, this is going to cost us $8,000. Is that the way I read it?
No, they're going to pay us $8,000.
They're going to pay us. Okay.
Yes.
And how many heads and beds do we expect to get out of this?
Carl will have to answer that.
I don't have the figure for that.
But we have some historic information from somewhere.
When the Chamber's run it before, and I don't know if they want to speak to it. I honestly don't know.
Okay. I think it's important we find out. Bruce, do you have any comment on that? Okay. Let's make sure we research that, because that is an important part of what we do. And we know this event has been positive and well received, and many people want us to continue to do it. So it's not about knowing the information before we decide to do it. We're going to do it, but we should know what kind of impact it has. Okay, with that said, do I have a motion? We've had public comment. Any further public comment? With no further public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Did I do something wrong? Did we already vote?
You just forgot to say aye.
Oh, okay, so aye. Any opposed?
We'll coach you, Mayor.
Thank you, I need it. Some days are more difficult than others. Okay, with that, we will close the consent agenda, and we will move into the regular agenda items. And we will start with item A, the update and discussion on water supply.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Today I have a different story to tell versus the last time I was standing up here giving a water supply update. And it's really good news. I'm sure many of you are aware. Here we have the current reservoir levels. These are January 30th volumes, so some of these are different from what they are today. But for the most part, we're at 52% at Ivy, 63% at Twin Buttes. And those are the two reservoirs that I'm going to kind of highlight today because they did receive the most runoff in the last fall. So last time I came to council, we were in this area. I was presenting at 25 months of water supply in the September 2018. Now we're up here above the 400,000 acre feet mark, and this is taking the capacities of both Twin Buttes, Nasworthy, Fisher, and Ivy into consideration. So you can see that last fall we took a drastic increase in our reservoir levels. Ivy specifically, it's kind of hard to see, and that mark I made is a little low too, but we're close to the 300,000 acre feet in Ivy, and so you can see it drastically increasing. We're back to where we were prior to 2010, and seeing some of those levels. For Twin Buttes, a little bit better on the mark that time, but we're sitting just slightly above the 100,000 acre foot mark, and you can see we weren't in those capacities until the early or the late 90s. So how does that affect our month's supply of water? I want to reiterate basically how the month's supply come into effect, and that is a worst case scenario calculations assuming no inflow. The Ivy projections are provided by the Colorado River Municipal Water District. We do take into consideration the Hickory, but only at the minimum production of 1.5 million gallons per day. And then we also use evaporation calculations. We use the 5-year average, which is 67 inches for the past 5 years. But I like to note what the 2011 evaporation rate was, which was 84 inches. So on really hot and dry years, that 67 inches can vary too and go up. So as of February 1st, we're sitting at 66 months of water supply. I don't think since my time here at the city we've been anywhere close to this amount of water supply. CRMWD last fall, after the recent rains, they projected Ivy to July of 2021, and they recently redid their operations model in January, and they took that number out to February of 2022. And so that's 37 months of remaining on Ivy. And they too also do a worst case scenario, assuming no inflow. But even today, we are seeing inflow into all these reservoirs, or specifically Ivy and Twin Buttes. They are still continually gaining. We are seeing those stream flows still increasing or staying steady for the most part. Fisher really didn't catch that much water in the recent rains, but we would have 2 months of water supply there, and then switching to the Twin Buttes, Nasworthy, and Hickory system, we would have 27 months of available water supply when it came time to use those sources.
And that still is using the 1.5 from Hickory?
Yes, ma'am. But a very important part of this calculation is how much we use per day. We monitor this, and for the past 4 years prior to 2018, we were using anywhere from 11 to 12 million gallons per day. And of course, we see spikes of 20 to 18 million gallons in the summertime, but then in the winter, those drop down to 9 and 10 million gallons. But on average, throughout the year, around 11.5 to 12 million gallons per day. 2018 is a little different story. We spiked up to 12.7 million gallons per day on average. And so this is something that we're going to be looking into. We do know that San Angelo is expanding. We have new businesses. We have more people coming into San Angelo. And that's another thing that we account for in terms of water supply is that population projection and those type of things.
So if you were to, and you probably don't have this information, so don't be embarrassed for me asking the question, but I'm going to ask the question anyway.
Okay.
So if you took a look at the population in 2014 versus the population in 2018, what would be the average per person usage? Because that helps to explain some growth if you look at increased population.
Right. And you're right, I don't have those numbers in front of me. But the other thing that we are going to look at is connection counts and those type of things. Because as new homes, new businesses, those are individual meters that are getting installed on our system. And so we can at least see how that trend is occurring. If we're seeing more meter counts and those type of things, we do know that some of this increase is due to population growth and expansion.
So you could go back to 2014 and look at the total number of water meters compared to 2018, the total number of water meters, and
Yes,
you
ma'am.
would know.
Yes, ma'am. And we can also trend some of our higher users, like Goodfellow and those type of things, to see as they bring more people on base how their increase alone is affecting these numbers as well.
And does the 2018 number, is that inclusive of the broken water lines and a large amount of water that is lost during those big breaks like the one that happened this past?
All of these numbers would take main breaks into consideration. Another thing that we do is we do a water loss calculation through the Texas Water Development Board each year. We are seeing that number since 2014 has gone down, so we're losing less water through those type of breaks. But some of those, depending on how the inputs into the data are, but we are seeing a lower number in terms of gallons lost through main breaks.
Okay.
And that's I have for y'all. If y'all have any other questions, I'll be happy to answer it.
Do I have questions from council or comments from anyone this way or that way?
Good news.
No? Lane?
How could this potentially help the rates that we have? 'Cause I've been hearing a lot of people saying that the rates are getting pretty high. So would that potentially impact?
Well, I think that we have to be cognizant of the rainfall, and depends on how each year. You can see in 2016, our usage actually dropped down from the prior years, not as quite far down as 2014, but it did compared to 2015. So we can't look at rates based on one single year. We have to look at that on on a longer span than that, because we're going to go through times of drought. We're going to go through times of heavier rainfall.
We would need a few years to see the data to see.
Yes, and
when
I
we
think
could
that we also have
potentially-
to be mindful that we have a lot of infrastructure improvements that we need to
Well,
make.
and that's the important part, because the rate structure was created to help pay for the infrastructure that we know exists, and down the road we know we have to make that investment. So that was always based off of not rainfall or water supply, but infrastructure needs.
Yes, ma'am, you took the words right out of my mouth. That's our future need, and that's what we're accounting for at this point. Anytime we make an adjustment to lower that amount, that will affect that infrastructure replacement in the future, so we have to be very mindful of that.
And those main breaks that the mayor was talking about earlier, we want to do as much pipe replacement as we can so that we can minimize those losses.
Mayor, and I do want to point out that from 2014 to 2018, we've had a 12.3% increase as far as consumption of water, which maybe is right in line with actually the growth that we are experiencing in our community. So,
It'd be interesting to pull it, and you can update us later.
Yes, ma'am.
Any further comments from council? Thank you. It's good news. We don't always get this kind of good news. Okay, so we'll move on to item B, which is consider ratifying COSA DC's resolution authorizing the use of sales and use tax funds in an amount not to exceed $300,147 to provide an economic development incentive to Principal LED LLC. And Shannon, you're on again.
Good morning. Shannon Scott, Business Retention and Expansion Coordinator for the city. As Mayor Gunter stated, this is essentially ratifying a resolution that the COSA-DC board approved a couple of weeks ago at their board meeting in regards to Principal LED LLC. So we'll start by giving a little background on the company and what they do. So they manufacture LED lighting fixtures. Currently, they are purchasing components from China and Southeast Asia, and the project that we're going to be discussing today will actually move that component manufacturing back to San Angelo at their facility.
Have you told Donald Trump that?
Move to approve.
So currently, Principal LED has, and they're anticipating hiring up to 64 additional employees within the next 3 years, with an average salary of $35,000. Due to the nature of this business, they're anticipating expanding their current facility, and with that, they're looking at putting in a capital investment of $2.4 million in conjunction with that expansion and the equipment that they'll need to purchase for this manufacturing component. So the breakdown of incentives that we are proposing today is $100,000, again, once that capital investment of the $2.4 million is met. And as Ms. DeWitt asked earlier, that does have to be, we do have to have the proof that that has been made in order to release that payment of the $100,000.
You ought to be able to see a $2.4 million investment, I think.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
We're offering $2,500 per job, per full-time equivalent, up to the 64 FTEs. And then up to $40,147 for property tax rebates for a value not to exceed $5 million. So the total of all of the incentives that we're proposing today is $300,147. With that said, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Brian Vincent, one of the co-owners of Principal LED, is here as well, so I'm sure he'd be happy to answer any questions as well.
You want to explain the up to $40, $147 for property tax rebates for values not to exceed $5 million?
Yes. So again, what we did, according to our new scale that we are using in our policy, is we sat down and we anticipated what that increase in value would be due to the $2.4 million in capital investment in equipment. So we assigned a value for each of those percentages for the 4 years and estimated that would be the absolute max that they could receive. But again, it can't go over the $5 million appraised value.
Okay. Do I have questions from council?
Shannon, I think y'all always do an economic impact study on that. Can you discuss that with us, what the results of that economic impact study were for this project?
Yes. So we are actually using more of an updated system than what we used to do for our economic impact analysis. And I did print it off. So I may just kind of touch on some of the details on what this analysis represents. So again, as Mr. Hebert stated, before we engage in any type of project, we have an economic impact analysis tool where we run all of the numbers. We put in the capital investment, we put in the job creation numbers and the salaries, because we have to know that we're going to get some kind of return on our investment. So we're not just throwing money out to the wind. In this particular case, I'll just give you examples of some of the data that it gives back to us in order to justify essentially our expense to these companies. So as we stated, they're going to hire up to 64 jobs, but that will actually create indirect jobs as well. So we're looking at, they call it a spin-off job, 44.2 spin-off jobs. For example, they have people anticipating coming in to help with construction, things like that. Obviously, you're hiring new employees, so they anticipate you might be buying a home, obviously going out in the community and spending sales tax dollars on groceries and shopping and things like that. So I'll just kind of thumb through here and pick out some information. So again, they do it over a 10-year period. So for example, they're expecting sales tax dollars around $35,000, workers to go out and spend about $90,000 for a total of about $125,000. They give us an estimate on the property taxes. Again, they anticipate some of these folks might be buying homes and things like that. So property tax increase of about $34,000.
you have a sum of a total of all of those?
I do, yes, ma'am. Here in this, in our report here.
You
so.
want to tell the audience the sum of the total?
Oh, the sum. I'm sorry. Of the which particular one?
Well, the economic impact. Tommy asked about the total economic impact, and so if you add up all of those pages of things that you've just listed, what is that total economic impact?
This particular new report does not break it down like it used to.
But you can add it up.
Well,
right?
yes, I can get those back to you if you'd like.
Does it give you a payback number, the number of years in which?
It does, and this particular one is around 8 years.
Okay.
And we try to stay under 10 years.
So that program should give you a total.
It does. So
Guy Andrews, Director of Economic Development. One of the things that the model does that's important to us is it gives us a return on investment percentage, which I think is important. In this particular case, it's about a 14% return on our investment over this period of time, which I think a lot of
years.
Right. I think a lot of people would like to see that type of return. So we go through a considerable amount of doing this analysis and figuring out what this is. What we're entering into is a partnership in these types of agreements with those companies. Not everybody takes advantage of the business retention and expansion programs, but the ones that typically do are fast-growing companies like Principal LED. And whenever an opportunity arises, we want to be able to respond to that opportunity. So in effect, we're both economic developers and we're opportunists. In their particular case, they have a window of opportunity that they need to meet, and so in that case, they've asked for us to partner with them. And in doing that partnership, we've made absolutely sure that there's going to be a return back to San Angelo for the investment and assistance we're providing.
Brian, would you like to come forward?
And real quick, Tommy, I did find that number. So the total economic impact for the next 10 years is $8,275,760.
Hi, my name's Brian Vincent. I'm one of the owners of Principal LED. Just one comment. You know, if we had chose to make a big deal to negotiate with the city, you would have known. I love San Angelo. We really appreciate the money, but you know, I want it to be a good return for San Angelo as well. So our goal in this was not to come in and see how much money we could extract from the city to benefit us. You know, we think this is good for San Angelo in terms of future jobs. I mean, if you kind of look at our growth rate, 7 years ago we had 7 employees. So I think we're on the right track.
Repeat that.
Ma'am?
Repeat that.
Oh, I think 7 years ago we had 7 employees. So
correct. So now you're looking at.
Yeah, and it is hard to project some of this stuff. Wes, if you look at the dollar amount, I believe when we did our first incentive package, I think it was $5,000 per FTE. And we understand that this is kind of an add-on incentive. So, but we needed a little bit of help to really get this built, an addition to our building so we could free up manufacturing space. So we worked with the city. They were really great in terms of helping us get our permits quickly. And so, you know, I think we're ready to move forward with that project. A lot of the equipment we bought is robotic kind of equipment. So, you know, in some of these other countries, the jobs that, you know, they may have 5 people doing the same job we can do with 1 here, but, you know, the pay rates are, you know, order of magnitude different, so they don't really look at labor as a major cost consideration, whereas here in the U.S. we do. So we're making a big investment in some automation equipment, some robotic equipment, semiconductor processing equipment. We've had to make modifications to the building in order to support kind of a clean type environment and that type of manufacture. So, and we were also working with the Workforce Training Center. Some of these jobs are are more skilled kind of, and they'll need special training. So I think in the long term, what it does is it not only brings some jobs back to the U.S. and particularly to San Angelo, but when you get this level of manufacturing and sort of integrate it into what you're doing, it sort of cements our roots sort of here, which I think, for me, I want to see more companies come to San Angelo. In fact, after this, I think I'm meeting with Shannon, and we're going to try and do some testimonials to see if we can help, attract other businesses and encourage local businesses to grow as well. So if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Move to approve as presented. Second.
Any public comment?
Steve Hampton. It was mentioned that they have had they have received money from COSA DC already. No mention. I didn't hear it in the presentation. What was the amount there? Apparently, they've already received 4 years of tax abatement, and they've been here 7 years. Why do we need to give them more tax abatement? Thank you.
Would anybody like to answer that?
So currently, Principal LED does have another contract out. Again, these are not in conjunction with each other, so they are two separate contracts for two separate projects. We'll just go over the brief requirements of that agreement. They were required to do a capital investment of $2.75 million, which they have far exceeded. They were required to retain 51 jobs and create 50 new additional jobs. At the end of year 17, they've created 38 full-time equivalents, again, have made in excess of the capital investment of $2.75 million. We've paid roughly under $450,000 in incentives to them thus far. And that does not include a property tax rebate or abatement. This particular one we're mentioning here would be for this particular contract.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I could
sir.
make clear that Shannon's working on this new agreement. It's additional value on top of the value they've already created. So when she talks about abating value in this contract, that's value that the company is creating above what they've already created. And so we're not giving anything back that we helped incentivize before. This is new growth on top of old growth. And so very exciting, and big thanks to Principal LED for the success that they've brought to San Angelo.
Thank you. Any further public comment? With no further public comment, we will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. We'll move into item C. Consider ratifying COSA DC's resolution authorizing the use of sales and use tax funds in an amount not to exceed $20,000 to provide an economic development incentive to Carter Fentress Engineering.
Okay, good morning again. This project as well is very similar to the last project in that it will be ratifying a resolution that the COSA DC board passed a couple weeks ago at their board meeting. We'll give a little background on what the company does and then go into details as far as the incentives and those things. So Carter Fentress currently provides civil engineering and project management services for residential and commercial land developers and municipalities in Central and West Texas. They currently have 3 employees and anticipate hiring up to 4 more within the next 3 years, with an average salary of $34,860. They also anticipate a capital investment of $200,000 for the purchase of a new building for their operations. So the incentives that we're proposing for this project include $16,000 once their capital investment of $200,000 is made, as well as $1,000 per full-time equivalent up to the 4 FTEs for a total of $20,000. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know Darren Fentress and Erica Carter are here as well with the company to help answer questions as well.
Do I have questions from council? No questions from council. Do I have
Move
a
to
motion
approve.
to approve? A second. Public comment, please.
Good morning, Erica Carter with Carter Fentress Engineering. I really just want to say thank you to Costa DC with the BREP program. They're helping us kind of live our dream and hopefully create more jobs and maybe one day come back and be as big as Principal LED.
Don't say hopefully, say we will be creating more jobs.
We're
not going to be hopeful, we're going to make it happen.
Absolutely. So thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Aaron.
Good morning, Mayor,
Good morning.
Council, Darren Fentress. I just want to echo what my partner said, Erica. We're very thankful to be in San Angelo. We raise our families here. We're thankful for the help that Costa DC and you all give us. We're growing pretty quick. This time last year we had 2 employees and now we have 5. So we're moving forward and thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Any further public comment? With no further public comment, we will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Item D, consider ratifying Costa DC's resolution authorizing the use of sales and use tax funds in an amount not to exceed $49,000 for professional marketing and consulting services relating to an assessment of industrial transportation facilities and industry needs and identification of markets essential to the promotion of new industrial development opportunities as authorized under Chapter 505 of the Texas Local Government Code for Type B Development Corporation, and authorizing the board president to enter into a personal services marketing and consultant contract for such purposes with Roger Horton, DBA Shea Transportation Consulting Services. Bob?
Good morning.
Schneeman.
Bob Schneeman with the city's Economic Development Department. As the council is, I'm sure, aware, and especially if you've heard some of John Barrio's presentation, transportation is becoming a significant consideration for San Angelo. There's a lot happening, potentially happening anyway, with the potential for I-14, the potential for I-27, the opening of the rail bridge in Presidio, which may just incredibly open new markets to us. And so staff felt like it was time to maybe start looking at what we need to do to prepare for what could be happening. This is a master contract with individual task orders. The total contract is not to exceed $49,000. And it's for consulting services, but sort of a feasibility study and a marketing study, if you will, to see what demands may be out there already that we're not fulfilling and what demands we may see in the future, and also identifying potential transportation needs, and in the event that there are certain facilities that we may need an operator for those facilities. So we are recommending that we hire Shea Transportation to do this preliminary study.
Do I have questions from council? Are my planes, trains, and automobiles?
Exactly it.
The train part. Okay, so with no questions from council,
Move to approve as presented.
with that, do I have any public comment? No public comment, we will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No nays. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Item E, consider a resolution adopting a uniform tax abatement policy. Bob?
Thank you again, Mayor. This item is a requirement by the state in order for us to have a tax abatement policy, and this is abatement, not rebate. So this is something that is done through the appraisal district. If we wish to abate taxes on any kind of a project, and this would include things even like the tiers projects, if we're going to have a tax abatement policy, if we're going to have a tax abatement program, we have to have a tax abatement policy, and we need to renew that every 2 years. So this was last adopted in November of 15th of 2016. By state law, it's only effective for 2 years, and it's required to maintain our eligibility to participate in tax abatement programs pursuant to Chapter 312 of the Texas Tax Code. And all abatements are always at City Council discretion. So this doesn't open the door to anything that y'all are not going to see again on an individual basis.
What is the percent of tax abatements to total appraised value of property on an annual basis?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
If you were to total all of the tax abatements that are in effect, if you will, for 2018, or you could go 2018 because it's our past year, what percentage would that be to the total appraised value of total property?
As of right now, we have no tax abatements in place. So 0.
You're just making sure the tool is in the toolbox.
That's
in case
correct.
we have a project.
Right, and this affects the next item as well.
Okay.
That's an important thing to say. It's a policy. But right now we have 0.
We have the ability, or the policy gives us the ability to participate. We do that on an individual project basis.
Do I have further questions or comments from council? Do I have a motion for approval of item E?
Move to approve. Move.
With a motion and a second, we are open for public comment on item E.
Policy is going to stand as it was in the consent agenda. Is it going to be those? Are those numbers the ones we're talking about for this policy? No, they're not. What are they?
Those percentages would be handled on an individual project basis. Typically, they will be brought normally by economic development staff. And again, it's project dependent on the number of jobs created, capital investment, but it's on an individual project basis. We don't have a specific percentage that we would abate.
But to Steve's point, just as we're doing today, I have the abatement request would come forward on regular agenda, not on consent agenda. And if they were on consent, we can always pull them open for discussion. So, but just like we did today in the earlier one, it's on the regular agenda.
That's correct. And they would also be part of basically what's called a 312 agreement between the city and whoever the recipient is. So that agreement would also have to be approved by city council, and that's not done usually on consent.
And the 312 is up for negotiation in Austin right now as part of the legislative session. So that is an ongoing debate and conversation as we speak.
That's correct.
Any further public comment? Steve?
Steve Hampton, follow-up question. Then if these are decided individually, then they should be valued. They should go through, I've heard it said at the appraisal district that they never know anything about these, and the city doesn't have any idea how much it's going to cost them sometimes. So they should work through the appraisal district when they're coming to a total on whether to or whether not to.
I think we need to look at this as not a cost, as an investment, and because as we make these changes like this, the investment that the individual businesses are making increases the total tax that we get back. Short term, yes, we're giving them a rebate, but long term, we are incentivizing these people to invest more money.
That's an important part. Are you getting that, Mr. Hampton, that when a business creates additional value, we're talking about abating or rebating part of that additional new value, not the old value. Does that make sense? So in the case of a funeral home, which adds on a parking garage, and they receive some sort of an incentive which includes a rebate for 50% of that new value, what Councilman Thomas just said was there's a net gain even though we've rebated a piece of that new value.
Yes, and I understand that, but what you're doing is you're saying we're going to add on $10, but we're going to give you back $5, and
for a limited time.
Huh?
Short period of time.
For a short period of time is correct.
Short period of time, yes, and that number keeps growing. We used to be in the 75, 50, 25. Now it's in the 90s, 80s, and 70s. So, and the person who has to make up the difference is the citizen who has to take it on it. You have to get your money somewhere, so you don't.
Well, the question mark in this case is: would you rather have zero?
I don't think that's. I don't think that's the result, the effect. I don't think if we do nothing, we don't get anything. They're going to naturally grow. I think there's some natural growth on its own.
It's an assumption on your part, and
well,
I think
so is yours.
Well, again, I think on our part, our assumption leads toward that creation of values in the future. We know for a fact that it'll do that. What you're saying is your assumption doesn't give us a fact that in the future they will grow. By us incentivizing, we know they are going to grow, and we know that value is going to be there in the future.
Okay. Disagreement.
Further public comment? And like I said, this item 312 is a big topic in Austin right now in terms of.
If I could make one clarification
Sure.
too, this is a tax abatement program. This is actually handled and calculated by the appraisal district. We have to work with them on this one because they are the ones who abate the taxes, and it's coming right out of the property tax. It's not a half-cent sales tax item.
So they do know the number.
We do.
Thank you.
There can be uncertainty. For example, when a business plans to add $100 in additional value, but they are able to accomplish that addition, they're able to execute the project for less money than that, then they've been efficient with their building monies, and so they don't receive quite as big a rebate or an incentive theoretically, because they actually built the improvements cheaper than they initially planned to do, which is a good thing for them. That can introduce uncertainty, but it's not bad uncertainty.
Do I have further public comment? With no further public comment, Tina, were you going to make a comment? Sorry.
We do disclose all of this information in our annual audit and our CAFR, so just wanted to point that out.
So if you would have a percentage to the total?
Yes, ma'am, we have a total in our CAFR every year.
Do you know what that number is, Tina, for 2018?
I don't know right offhand, but it's minimal. It was less than $300,000, I believe, for total abatements and rebates last year.
So $300,000 off of a $5 billion tax base? Okay. Any further public comment? With no further public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Item F, first hearing of an ordinance ordaining the city's participation in the Texas Enterprise Zone Program pursuant to the Texas Enterprise Zone Act, Chapter 2303, Texas Government Code, providing tax incentives, designating a liaison for communication with interested parties, and nominating Ethicon, Inc. to the Office of the Governor, Economic Development and Tourism, EDT, through the Economic Development Bank as an enterprise project. Presentation made by Schneeman. That's kind of complicated. Do you want me to read it again?
We don't write these.
We want you to explain it, Mayor. We don't want you to read it again. You explain it.
Let somebody else explain this one.
Thank you. We were approached actually last week by a consultant for Ethicon. They periodically will apply for an enterprise zone designation. That's a designation that has to be done by the community, in this case, the city. They were last designated in August of 2012, and by state law, that's only effective for 5 years, so it expired in 2017. And I'll explain in a minute what that really means. If it's approved by the governor's office, the company becomes eligible for certain sales and use tax rebates from the state. Okay, this gets paid out of the state's portion of the sales and use tax. Has no effect on the city as far as our sales tax receipts. They're on a sliding scale based on an amount of capital investment and a number of jobs created or retained, up to a maximum of $7,500 per job and a maximum of $3.75 million, and that requires the creation of 500 jobs.
500 new jobs?
500 new jobs, correct. I did some research on Ethicon. According to their consultant, right now they're paying the state about $20,000 per month in sales tax, and they pay directly to the state. We don't see that. It's a direct payment from them.
Do we get a percentage of it back?
We do. Yes, we get our normal
What
percentage back.
Right.
They also pay about they're estimating they pay about that same amount to their vendors. So it's sales tax that they're paying based on their sales, and then sales tax that they're paying based on what they purchase. So that amount is about another $20,000 per month.
And we get our percentage of that as well.
We get our percentage of that as well. That's correct. So literally no impact on the city. Of course, Ethicon has been here for a long, long time. They've recently created about an additional 100 jobs out there with no request for any kind of assistance from the city as a part of that. Usually, if they're going to do a big project, they will come and talk to us. And the last time was again in I believe 2012, and the total, they had 2 phases to that project. The total, I believe, was I believe the first one was about 12 million and the second was about 18 million in the 2 phases. And as a result of those investments, we can assume that those 100 jobs were created over time. I don't remember if I have another slide. I don't. We will be bringing this item back for a second reading on the 19th. And at that time, the plant manager from Ethicon and also a member of their consultant team will be here to answer specific questions. That will also be a public hearing. As I say, they came to us last week. There are some very stringent requirements on public notifications and what have you. So in order to meet all of those, we had to actually schedule a second public hearing. Even though it would normally be 2 readings anyway for a change in the ordinance.
We've had this enterprise zone before, so
we have had this with
it only lasts
Ethicon.
for 5 years. So legitimately, it was over in August 2017. So the question would be, why is this 2019 and it's just now coming back instead of having brought back to us in 2018, right?
This is when they were applying for that state participation in that state program. That's what stimulated the action is.
Correct. What the consultant does is they look at the number of applicants that they're anticipating. The governor can only approve so many per quarter. And they saw March 1st, all of a sudden, apparently, was going to be a light quarter, so they said, okay, this is the time we want to apply. They won't apply if they don't think there's a chance that they're going to get it, if there's a lot of competition or whatever.
And so they benefit how?
They benefit by the abatement or rebate of that half-cent sales tax on it, and it's based on a sliding scale. It's from the state, not from the local portion
The
of sales
tax abatement comes from the state, not local.
That's correct.
So we get our full 100% of the tax?
We get our full percentage, right? This is a state program. It's a state incentive through the government's office. It's called the Enterprise Zone Program.
Do I have questions, comments from council?
Move to approve as presented.
Do I have a second? And I have a second. Do I have any public comment? Lynn?
Lynn McClellan, and I just have a question. I'm not clear. If there's no change in the money back to the city and no impact there, then why does the city have to join this program? What are there must be some sort of rules or regulations the city has to adhere to join this program.
As a part of the state's program, the company or the Enterprise Zone project has to be nominated by the community. We have to show that there is community support for the project.
Did that answer your question, Lillian? Unusual, but yes. Okay. With no further public comment, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 7-0. We will move on to item G, public hearing and first reading of a budget ordinance to update the number of authorized firefighters. Chief Dunn?
Mayor, Council, basically what you have before you is a housekeeping item to reconcile the 8 positions that were added in the fall with the SAFER grant. So before you in the ordinance, it will change your authorized total classification positions from 171 to 179, and in the specific classification of firefighter from 82 to 90.
We've previously approved that.
Yes, back in late September, October, I believe.
Right.
This ordinance just brings that into alignment with what happened in October.
Any questions or comments from council? With none, may I have a motion?
Move approval as presented.
Public comment? No public comment. We'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 7-0. All right, I am going to come forward. Okay, item H is consider accepting Judge Alan Gilbert's letter of resignation as appointed presiding judge of the City of San Angelo Municipal Court to be effective February 28th, 2019. And Brian, would you like to come forward and make this presentation? And Judge Gilbert, would you like to come forward as well, please?
Mayor, council. This is all right. So around the turn of the year, right at the beginning of the year, we had heard some information that gave us some mixed feelings. We're sad for ourselves, but we're happy for Judge Gilbert that he's able to make the transition into retirement and kind of go from doing things that he's required to do the things that he really loves to do, and which I know he loved. Doing the municipal court as well. But anyway, per our charter, we have to go through the ceremonial acceptance of that resignation letter. So that's really what we're here to do. I think we can do that by consensus. I don't think he's going to give us an option not to accept.
We're going to be all over this one. We're going to fight this one tooth and nail.
Yeah.
So, and that's really all I have.
Okay. Nay for the heck of it.
Let's go.
I have a motion not to approve.
Second.
A million.
This is a special agenda item, so it is recognition of Judge Gilbert's 44 years of service to the city of San Angelo. And Daniel, you're here as well. So the city of San Angelo is losing a long-time and dedicated public servant who has consistently displayed hard work, diligence, and contribution to the community. On February 28, 2019, the Honorable Judge Alan Gilbert will retire as municipal court judge for the city of San Angelo after 44 years of public service. In 1974, at the age of 21, you don't have to calculate, Judge Gilbert began his public career when he ran for and won a spot on the San Angelo City Commission, today known as the City Council. As a lifelong resident of Lakeview, he knew firsthand the issues his community faced and recognized the need for equal representation in city government. Once elected, Judge Gilbert was instrumental in the creation of the single-member districts that San Angelo benefits from today. Nearing the end of his term, he was encouraged by several city commissioners to consider a career as municipal court judge. Perhaps his most lasting legacy since his appointment has been his work to set the juveniles who have appeared before him on a productive path. Throughout his distinguished career, Judge Gilbert made changing the lives of young people a priority. Juveniles who pass through his courts have the opportunity to work in the community garden, which over the past 30 years has provided fresh vegetables to the local food bank and soup kitchen. With Judge Gilbert's vision, these young people have learned valuable life lessons while bettering San Angelo. His heart for helping people is evident in his innovative ideas for developing work programs as a way for offenders to repay their debt to society while learning responsibility and while serving the community. The city of San Angelo is grateful for Judge Gilbert's dedication and service to his hometown. Therefore, I, Brenda Gunter, Mayor of the City of San Angelo, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby recognize and applaud the Honorable Judge Alan Gilbert for his achievement and positive determination to make a difference in our community.
We also have a presentation for the judge. Before I actually make this presentation, I just wanted to make a note. I actually met Judge Gilbert almost 9 years ago, which is 3 years prior to my arrival here in San Angelo when I was in Eagle Pass. We were really shooting to improve our municipal court at the time, and we figured why not model one of the best municipal courts around, and that's the municipal court here in San Angelo. So I already knew from the very get-go, before arriving in San Angelo, the quality of individual that we had in that position. Often people say that when I leave, I just want to leave this place a little bit better than when I found it. I'll tell you right now, Judge Gilbert has left this place light years ahead of where he found it. We were so blessed and to have him in this position. I consider him a dear friend, and I wish him the absolute best. With that said, we do have a plaque for the Honorable Judge Gilbert, 1973 to 2019. 75. I'm not wearing my contacts. And again, this is just a flag that's flown over the city of San Angelo. And this really signifies what the judge has meant to us for so many years. His outstanding work in their community, always keeping juveniles in mind, helping to transform lives through his counseling and his caring attitude. Judge, we wish you the absolute best.
Thank you all very much. I sincerely appreciate the flag and the words that were spoken. But it's been my great opportunity, and because of the mayor, the city council, you and mayors and city council and city managers past, that we've had this opportunity to work with the city of San Angelo as the judge. The people standing in the back of the room, many of the employees from the court, there's nothing that any of us ever do by ourselves, and it takes the whole office and everyone to get all of this done. And I appreciate everything and every opportunity. And I was a 22-year-old kid. That's all there is to it. I was 21 when I got elected to the city council and 22 when I was appointed. But for some reason, some people saw something and gave me an opportunity. And I think that's what we have to do through the world is give back that opportunity and give people the chances, and regardless of who they are, where they come from, is give them that opportunity. And that's what we've tried to make sure that the municipal court has operated on in the last 40 years, and I feel sure it'll be operating on those standards in the future. I want to thank all of you in the back that we've had the opportunity to work with, mayor, city council, all the city employees, and I want to thank my family for putting up with the 2 o'clock morning call-outs and the 3 o'clock morning call-outs and the times we couldn't go places and we had to take 2 cars because I was on call to go to a movie or go to a show, and to my children for all they had to put up with growing up with their dad being a judge, and all of my family and the support that I've been given from my mom to my wife to my children to my in-laws to my cousins. All of them have always been super supportive. When other people wasn't real appreciative of some of my actions, they've always been there to be supportive of everything, and I sincerely appreciate it. It's been a wonderful, wonderful opportunity that the good Lord has blessed me with, to have all of you to be able to work with. And the citizens of San Angelo, thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I hope that we've just done some things that have made the city of San Angelo a little bit better place to live. Thank you very much.
Teresa?
We have a photographer.
Teresa, do we need to formally act upon the acceptance of the resignation letter, or no? Okay.
Can we?
Okay, so what we want to do is we're going to take a break. So we're going to take a break, and so at this point, we are through with the regular agenda. We're going to take a 30-minute break, of which we will be doing a reception. And then City Council will go into the closed session, and so I'll go ahead and read the closed session. Executive session under provision of Government Code Title V, Open Government Ethics, Subtitle A, Open Government, Chapter 551, Open Meetings, Subchapter D, Exceptions to Requirement that meetings be open under the following sections. A, Section 551.074A1, to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee regarding board commission appointments. So at this moment, we are on break. Okay.
The council meeting will be called back to order at 11:08, and there are no announcements from executive session. So we will now go into, if I get the right page, consider approving various board nominations. They are as following: Construction Board of Adjustment and Appeals, Lyndon Butler, SMD 6, to a second term ending February 2021. The Development Corporation, Dr. David Cummings, SMD 5, to a second term ending February 2021. Fort Concho Museum Board, Brandon Allen, SMD 1, to a second term ending January 2021. Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, Allison Watkins, Park Commission Representative. Do I have a motion for approval of the above board nominations?
Second.
Any public comment? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All in favor of the nominations, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, passes 7-0. Are
Move we
there
adjourn.
announcements? The only announcement is meeting adjourned. And with that, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye. We're done.
We're done.
Thank you, everyone, for attending.